From the depths of a cavernous hollow, the world beyond opened into a valley bathed in sunlight, where time-worn wooden buildings clung precariously to cliffs like relics of some forgotten age. Yet as darkness fell, that same vista became a shadowed chasm, the settlement beneath steep cliffs swallowed in gloom, its heartbeat a heavy, echoing pulse that resonated from the earth's bowels. Within that dim expanse, Li Huowang labored, disheveled and gaunt, his hands grinding ingredients into a coarse, viscous paste within a great stone mortar. Beside him crouched a young girl, her hair knotted in twin buns and her face smeared with dirt, offering something small and bright. Li Huowang, weary and unyielding, bade her leave him be. She persisted, gesturing toward the darkened paste and proffering candy, her expression at once vacant and insistent, tainted by smudges of blood and grime. When she did not respond, he pushed her away. Around them, others mirrored their toil, all bent over their own mortars, pale shadows against the cavern's oppressive gloom. Li Huowang, with a sharp click of his tongue, dismissed her offering, muttering that what she perceived as sweetness was, in truth, medicinal paste. He thought it pointless to explain further. She could not comprehend. Yet with a resigned gesture, he extended a hand toward her. Behind him, banners flapped silently in the stale air, emblazoned with the names of Li Huowang and the Zephyr Temple. A surge of irritation swept through him. In his mind, he catalogued the denizens of this place. Madmen, fools, cripples, monstrosities, all grotesque caricatures of humanity. The cavern itself seemed a museum of deformity and despair, and he wondered why fate had tethered him to this accursed congregation. Suddenly, a voice shattered the air, demanding to play. Li Huowang looked up and saw a brutish man crouched over a young woman whose hair was white as frost. He spoke in false gentleness, promising it would only be brief. She shrieked her refusal, but the man persisted, and around them, twisted faces peered from the shadows, grinning behind masks or bare teeth, laughter like shards of ice. Li Huowang's resolve crystallized. He told himself it was an illusion, a fabrication born of malice and hysteria. Clutching the stone pestle, he brought it down with grim certainty. Blood blossomed, the illusion of cruelty rendered tangible, and the man's eyes widened in shock and pain. Over him, Li Huowang towered, the pestle dripping with red, as the white-haired girl cowered behind a shadow. The wounded brute, writhing and screaming, warned Li Huowang of the master's wrath. But Li Huowang, unmoved, regarded the master as inconsequential, dismissing him with cold disdain. The man's disbelief lingered in the air, and for a moment the cavern fell silent, the spectators frozen in a tableau of fear and awe. A new figure appeared at the cave's threshold, clad in robes as white as moonlight, commanding them to cease their quarrel. He addressed Disciple Li and Disciple Wang, declaring that the master awaited them. The brutish man laughed with cruel anticipation, certain of Li Huowang's doom, yet the young adept remained unmoved, his expression unreadable as a void. The white-haired girl's hand found the sleeve of his robe, and her eyes pleaded silently, begging him not to depart. Li Huowang turned, following the figure in white, while the girl with the buns trailed close. They navigated the jagged passageways. Her gaze met his, a mixture of fear and tentative hope. As they entered another cavern, Li Huowang's thoughts churned. He questioned the fury that had erupted within him and the violence he had wrought upon the brutish man. Such impulses were alien to his nature, and he vowed that the darkness of this place would not warp his essence. He clenched his fist, steeling himself against the corrupting influence of the cavern's inhabitants. The girl touched his hand, small fingers pressing against the rigid muscles. Li Huowang demanded the meaning of her action. She revealed a small, dark pouch within her palms. She smiles and offers him some candy. She tells him to take it, and he did, her smile serene and unwavering. In her innocent conviction, she whispered that the master was great and that the master bestowed candy upon them. Blood-red strokes, drawn by invisible hands, stretched like wounds across the void. They pulsed and trembled, as though the night itself had been flayed and left bleeding upon the walls of the world. Li Huowang stood with the girl whose hair was bound in twin buns upon the uneven floor of a cavern vast as a cathedral. The rock beneath their feet glimmered faintly, suffused with an ominous crimson glow. The air thrummed with a low, sonorous vibration, part chant, part heartbeat, and its rhythm seeped into the bones. The girl clutched at his sleeve as they advanced toward a narrow stone bridge that spanned a pit of living fire. Below, molten energy swirled in hues of red and violet, rising in violent bursts that scorched the air. Beyond the bridge, a circular dais of black stone hovered above the inferno, its edges inscribed with sigils that pulsed like veins. Upon that dais sat a man in robes of deep green, his posture meditative, his form wreathed in the red haze that drenched the entire chamber. The girl's eyes widened with rapture. Her trembling hands folded as she beheld him, and, with the breathless devotion of a child before a god, she invoked her master. The meditating figure stirred. He lifted one hand in acknowledgement without turning. His voice, soft and languid, welcomed his beloved disciple. Then, as he turned, his features split and warped, the flesh pulling into an inhuman smile. His mouth opened too wide, revealing rows of jagged, interlocking teeth. He murmured that she had kept him waiting. The cavern's red light flared, and for an instant, he seemed winged, his green robes billowing like feathers of an unholy angel. The vision twisted. In a blur of impossible movement, he appeared behind the girl. His hand, white as bone, seized her by the head, and with a gesture of grotesque tenderness, he cast her into the air. The girl's scream pierced the din. She flew across the chamber and crashed into a giant cauldron of steaming blood. Another disciple shrieked in horror as the master's laughter rose above the roar of fire. The ritual had begun. He began to chant. His words were not spoken, but carved into the air in lines of molten red. By Cho, my life extends. Spirit defended by Jiazi. Soul shielded by Jiaxiu. I am preserved by Jiaxin. The cauldron frothed. Within its viscous depths, the girl floated, her skin slick with the crimson ichor. Her eyes lost focus, and a smile bloomed upon her lips as her mind dissolved into delusion. She imagined sweetness where there was only death, thinking with the dim joy of a child that the syrup tasted of sugar. Her last conscious thought was that the master was kind. Then the pestle descended. A monstrous implement of stone plunged into the cauldron and began its work. The girl's form was ground apart, her flesh reduced to pulp, her bones to powder. The scent of iron and smoke filled the chamber. Bits of hair and fragments of eyes floated upon the surface as the master's chanting deepened. His face had grown swollen, glistening with boils that burst as he shouted his final invocation. By Jiawu, my soul finds refuge. By Jiachen, my true spirit is revealed. He cried for the cauldron to be fired higher, commanding his disciples to condense the pills of immortality. Two masked attendants, their faces painted in macabre colors, stepped forth to obey. They drew the bubbling mixture from the cauldron and poured it into a pit, from which a thick, red liquid streamed into a waiting vessel shaped like a sphere of flesh and bone. Li Huowang watched in silence. The stench was overwhelming, yet within his mind something fractured. He whispered inwardly that the smell was false, that all of it was a fabrication. Even the grotesque concoction, he thought, was no more real than a lion's head meatball. The master turned toward him, his eyes burning green, and asked whether Li Huowang had truly dared to insult him, to call a Taoist master mere flatulence. But Li Huowang heard only distortion. The words warped into meaningless noise, the syllables heavy with unreality. The master drew closer, roaring for an answer. His breath reeked of ash. The air itself bent and writhed under the surge of his aura, a green light that devoured the red glow of the cavern. Li Huowang's thoughts erupted in defiance. Fake! The word echoed like a blade drawn from its sheath. Fake! Fake! The world convulsed. The master's figure twisted, melting into streams of black and green mist. The chanting ceased. The cavern unraveled, its walls disintegrating into threads of void. Li Huowang's eyes snapped open. He no longer stood amid fire and blood. Instead, he lay upon a narrow bed beneath sterile white light. A pillow cradled his head, and his face was bandaged in strips of gauze. The smell of antiseptic replaced the stench of blood. Monitors beeped softly beside him, their tones steady and indifferent. He tried to move, but his body resisted. Straps crossed his chest and wrists. A straitjacket bound him in restraint. Beyond the bars of the hospital bed stretched a quiet, clinical ward painted in pallid blue. He stared upward, breath shallow, the last echoes of chanting fading from his mind. It's all fake, he thought. The machines continued their calm, mechanical rhythm, beep, 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 counting the seconds of a reality that no longer felt certain.